Hello and welcome to the Week 14 Power Hour podcast. I'm your host, Scott Barrett, joined, as always, by John Proctor. How you doing, Johnny?
What's up, man? Just ready to talk
I just
about
realized Dude, you're going to talk about Kenny Britt, you're going to talk about Frank Gore, you're going to talk about Jeremy Hill, and it's going to be the most John Proctor podcast ever.
Sounds about right, man. Sounds about right.
We just love like unheralded, unathletic players who score points.
Whoa. Kenny Britt is insanely athletic. He's just
pre-ACL injury, Kenny Britt was.
Still is. Gets no credit.
Really?
Anyways.
Does the tape back that up?
I don't know. I don't watch much Kenny Britt tape, dude.
All right, well. So I just realized I was like, I say this every week. I'm like, I'm the host. I'm the host. I'm not really the host. Like I just say the intro, and like sometimes I have like a 10-minute monologue on like failing with chicks or poisoning my body with fast food. But like really, like that's all I do, and then you kind of lead us in to each game. So you're actually kind of the host. I just do the intro.
Whatever, man. It's a co-host thing. It's a team thing. It's a.
That's true.
It's true. Partnership. Call it a relationship, you know? Like
Yeah.
All right. Oh, TJ, you're already talking shit on Frank Gore.
Oh man.
Is
he talking shit on bourbon too?
Coming from the guy who recommends Devontae Booker, the king of going 20 for 60.
Yeah, and recommended Jeremy Langford this offseason, as did all of got unfollowed by someone for that. Anyway,
yeah.
Okay. If you're listening at home, like on iTunes the next day, we have the best podcast chat, bar none. Highly recommend you tuning in live every Friday night, usually 11-ish, to chat. Pat Thorman's in there. Everyone's drinking. Have a good time. Highly recommend checking it out. If not, that's okay. What's up to TJ? Guys in the chat right now, please make fun of Johnny, who's drinking a carrot beer. Don't know what that is.
I already finished that,
I think
dude.
most garden variety hipsters don't even know what that is.
I'm moving on to a cucumber beer next.
Ugh. You're the worst. Ugh, that can't be good. All right, should we get into our sponsors?
No, but let's talk about the listener league. So,
guys, we're like a legit podcast right now. We have a drinking game you can check out at Paeno's Twitter. We have a listener league brought to us by Laker Great. Johnny can confirm his handle for us. It's awesome. Did it fill this week? Do you know, Johnny?
I think we have like 6, 7, 8 more spots, something like that. It should fill.
All right. Do you want to talk about the winners last week? Because I sure do. Last week's first place winner was T. Jeffersona. He was definitely Team Scott. He rocked the Stafford Tate stack. You and Tyler trashed. So props to T. Jeffersona for being Team DFB. Second place was Stoney85, who went with a Jameis to Brait stack. Also had Bucks defense. It was kind of a weird lineup, but it worked. And then third place was Eat Sleep Sports, who also had a pretty Scott Barrett lineup. He went with Ladarius, another guy Johnny and Tyler trashed. And then we're just not going to mention who came in fourth and fifth place, and we're going to move on to something else.
Fair enough. I won't even tout that I came in fourth place because I did. So, yeah, man, you want to get into this slate?
Well, do Do you know who came in 5th place?
I have no idea. I don't even know.
Calkins came in 5th.
Oh,
so good for
fair
Calkins. I was a solid 12th despite rocking the breeze. But anyway, anywho, you want to hop into this?
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh, actually, let's not do it. Today's podcast is sponsored by Sal Stefanile and 2QBs.com. He sent me a Matt Jones jersey. That's awesome. They're sponsored. Love the site. Legitimately really great content. Really awesome writers there. Johnny writes there. Calkins right there. Ton of awesome guys right there. This is also sponsored by Nixon because why not? Check out his band Framing Hanley. You could hear them at Hot Topic whenever you walk in. Check out his even newer band, Sumner Roots. And you can check him out on Twitter, Nixon. Yep.
Oh, just losing your internet as we go. Cucumber beer is good, though. So you want to get into the slate, man?
Yeah, let's do it.
So first game we got the Bears at the Lions. Lions are a pretty heavy favorite at home, though 70% of the tickets are coming in on the Lions, and the line is actually moving a little bit towards the Bears. Lions open, I think, as 9 or 10-point favorites, and they're now like 7-point favorites. So I don't know. It's an interesting spot. I'm not like stoked about anybody in this game other than Jordan Howard. Who are you thinking about? Who you like here, man?
Yeah, it's pretty much just Jordan Howard for me. I think Ebron you can get at a low ownership percentage. Tate's another guy who went off last week. I think should still be in a good spot. Outside of that, no one really. Are you on Marquez?
He's hurt, man. So it's like the conversation this week is whether you can play Cam Meredith and Josh Bellamy, because Bellamy like went off when Marquise Wilson died last week. I'm not sure if Marquise Wilson has practiced at all. I know he was hurt. He was not.
He returned to practice yesterday.
Did he? Okay. He's questionable. So if all three of them play and he's questionable, I don't know. I don't think you can really play any of those guys with like confidence. But I guess Meredith is the guy you'd feel most comfortable with. I guess. I mean,
yeah.
I think they want to just run the ball, man. So I think it's Howard. Dude had 32 carries last week. It's just, I mean,
he's such a monster.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think Riddick and Ebron and Tate are all interesting because the Lions are missing those inside linebackers. We didn't really get to see like what the Bears defense would look like without them because, Cap just shit the bed. Well, Chip Kelly shit the bed. So I think they're interesting for sure. But Riddick's kind of gone back to not having that ceiling, Like last year he didn't really have a ceiling. And now that he's not getting goal line carries, like Dwayne Washington's being used as the big back, I don't I'm not stoked about what he can do as a ceiling player. I don't know. How do you feel about Riddick?
No, I think that's exactly right. I think we also kind of just got lucky with him and his end zone scores. I don't see that being a consistent thing going forward with Washington back for sure. Really not on him this week. I do think that Howard is kind of the one guy I'm super excited about. The matchup's not even really that great, is it? Right? But he's just playing out of his mind. He ranks top 3 in yards per carry, yards per carry after contact, or yards after contact per attempt, missed tackles per carry. He's just playing out of his mind, and You have no offense outside of him, so he should just continue seeing the work.
Yeah, I mean, Detroit's like quote unquote better against the run than the pass, but they're still bad. They're just a bad defense. So
yeah.
I think this is a good spot for Ebron. I like Ebron a lot. It's for the same reason I liked Vance last week, and he didn't really do anything, but it's the same exact spot.
What with Marvin Jones?
I don't know what the deal is with Marvin Jones this week. I really haven't seen much on him. I was looking him up a little bit earlier. I think I don't really see limited. He had a limited practice on Friday, questionable. So I don't think we're going to get an answer until Sunday morning. But I mean,
I think Tate's a great play again.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, if he sits, you can definitely play Tate. If everybody's healthy, I like Ebron. Bears are actually okay against the pass. But anyways, I think that's enough. I think that's enough for this game. You want to move on to the next one?
Yeah.
All right. So this is a game that I really like is the Chargers at the Panthers. So the Chargers are slight underdogs in this, and I'm not sure I'm buying that. A lot of tickets coming in on the over, and the over is coming down. I think Rivers is in a great spot. I think Tyrell Williams is in a great spot. I think Gates is in a good spot. I think the Panthers are in a bad spot. What are your thoughts on this one?
What makes you say the Panthers are in a bad spot?
Chargers defense is legitimately good, and the Panthers have been legitimately bad for weeks. So, Chargers pass rush is good. The Chargers have 15 interceptions this year. It's the most in the league, and Cam's just playing bad football. The offensive line's playing bad. I like him. Or I like them. I like the Chargers.
It's kind of a good spot for Jonathan Stewart, right? Who probably should go super low owned. But I've said comfortable starting him anytime the Panthers aren't favored by a huge amount. And you're right. It's a tough spot for all the wide receivers. It's a tough spot it's an average spot for Greg Olsen. And then Cam Newton's just not really been consistent enough to really be in play in this kind of spot. San Diego, I guess. Tyrell Williams, I think, is an awesome play. You want to talk about him?
Tyrell Williams? Is that what you said? I assume he said Tyrell Williams. Yeah. So Tyrell Williams is in a great spot. The Panthers, you just can't run on the Panthers, so Rivers is going to have to throw the ball. I think he's healthy enough. He was a little limited last week in the sense that he didn't see a ton of targets, but Rivers only threw 25 times last week. Tyrell still played 90% of the snaps. I think the labrum issue is not as much of a concern as people want to make it. Give him a cortisone injection, dude's good to go. So I'm in on Tyrell again this week, especially because Rivers should have to throw 30, 40 times.
Yeah, so I have a great stat from Mike Taglieri, who I podcast with every week pretty much for forever. So since week 5, if we exclude Denver games, he's scored 25.7, 24.0, 18.5, 26.5, 21.0, and 12.7 fantasy points. The big issue was that this was his worst game was week 13. Is that an injury? I still think he's priced well below where he should be, and I think he is a strong play this week. I wasn't really on Gates, and it's kind of surprising to hear you say it, who's been super anti-Gates all season. You want to make the case for him?
I'm not stoked about him, but if Kuechly is out, he got in a limited practice.
Kuechly's going to play from what I heard. Yeah.
If he plays, then no, I'm not on Gates. But if he's out, I'm just I'm on tight ends against them without him. I think the Panthers are kind of falling apart a little bit. So I think this is a good spot for the Chargers. I think Rivers is a good play too. So I will.
Melvin Gordon, I guess. Thomas Rawls just had the biggest fantasy game of any running back against Carolina, but that was with Kuechly out.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Are we on him if Kuechly's out?
If why can't you pronounce his name? But if Kuechly plays,
I'm trying to get everyone to drink right now. That's what I'm doing.
Whatever.
Everyone at home is drinking every time I do that.
If Kuechly plays, it's a big knock for Melvin and Gates. But I think the thing with Melvin is like he's gonna see if the Carolina if they're stuffing the run, he's gonna see like 10 targets, which is nice, and he's gonna run the ball in the red zone. Like I mean, you can. The Panthers are great, but you can still score at the 1 yard line if you get there. There's no team that like completely keeps you from running the ball in, and like they run the ball when they get to that point. And the Panthers have allowed I think 9 rushing touchdowns. They're not the Ravens, but they are definitely limiting you in the large yards per carry department. Like Melvin's probably not going to get 100 yards in this game, so you're not like looking for that 100-yard bonus, but a touchdown, 10 targets, maybe 50, 60 yards on the ground. He could have a good game, but I'm not like excited about him this week. That's kind of where I'm at. The guy, I think the sneaky guy is Ted Ginn with Hayward on Kelvin. Yeah. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, he's actually kind of emerged as their top receiver as of late. We saw this kind of happen last year too, but let's see. Since week 6, 8 targets, 6 targets, 7 targets, 8 targets, 4 targets, 10 targets, 6 targets. He has 3 touchdowns in his last. Over that span, he has 230 something yards. He had 80 yards last week, 115 the week before that. Both of those, of course, were in losses, and I think that what kind of helps him. So if you do think San Diego is going to win, as Vegas does not, kind of probably makes him a better play. But again, I still think he's like a low GPP kind of guy.
Yeah, he's definitely a GPP play. But I think the interesting thing with Ginn is like Casey Hayward has been insanely good this season, and like I didn't give him the credit that he deserved last week. I kind of said I think Mike Evans has the advantage here, and then he smashed him. So if Casey Hayward can stop Mike Evans, then he's just going to completely smother Kelvin Benjamin. So Cam's going to have to throw it elsewhere. And I've seen some people talking about Kelvin Benjamin this week, and I don't get it at all. So I'm not touching him. So,
word.
Yep. Again, I don't know. I don't know what's going on with Olsen. It's just like it's dying, I guess. Any thoughts on Olsen? Like, do you want Olsen? I mean, I guess he's a contrarian play because he stunk.
Yeah, I don't know. Definitely workload, things like air yards, all that is going downhill. I will say I was pulling targets inside the 10 mark. And he really jumped out as someone who's kind of dominated me. But it's really hard to make a case for him this week. I agree. And there's other tight ends I like at a contrarian ownership that we'll get to later.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, it's a good spot for him, but I'm just not excited about that offense. You want to move on?
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk Texans at the Colts. So this is one where there's a lot of interest in this game. I'm not quite as excited about this game as everybody else is. I don't see the appeal that it's going to shoot out. The Texans are just like bad on offense. The Colts have a pretty high team total at home, 26.25. It's like a decent over under at 46, but like I would bet, I'd bet the under if I had to pick one or the other. It's a good spot for the passing game for the Texans, but they really haven't done much. I like Luck, but it's a total where he's probably not going to need to come from behind or anything. What do you think about Luck and talk about Hilton? I know you're on Hilton too.
Yes. So this is the second highest implied points for Indianapolis. But shout out to TJ Hernandez. He really posted a bunch of great stats this morning that I retweeted. So the highest implied point total of the week goes to Tampa Bay at 26.75. And if we go back to week 1 of 2013, that's the first time that no team was projected to score at least 27 points before this week. So shout out to TJ Hernandez for a great stat. Like, yes, they have the second highest implied point total, but with very low implied point total. T.Y. Hilton, yeah, that's definitely someone I'm on. He's going to be up against Charles James, who's most famous for wearing socks on Hard Knocks.
And being bad.
Has only – yeah, and he's not good. He has only ever played on the majority of his team's snaps in 4 career games. He was an undrafted rookie free agent in 2013 when he ran a 4.49 40-yard dash at his pro day. T.Y. 4.34 40-yard dash, or at least he did in 2012. We know that T.Y. Hilton runs the majority of his routes from the slot, roughly 57%. On 26 career targets, again, not that many, implying he's inexperienced. He's allowed 16 receptions on those 26 targets for 187 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's not good. He's inexperienced. He's slow. T.Y. Hilton is very good. He's fast, and he should blow the wheels off of him. Philip Dorsett is in a good spot, but fuck Philip Dorsett. Dante Moncrief is in a not good spot against A.J. Boye. Probably mispronounced that, so drink
I
at home.
I think it's Boye.
He ranked 7th.
I have no idea, though, for sure.
Really? Did I get that right?
No. I think it's Boye.
Boye. All right.
Whatever.
Yeah,
wait,
whatever.
is Charles?
Yeah,
wait, Charles. Someone's saying Charles James is not a Texan. Are we missing something?
Maybe PFF's chart is super wrong, and when I checked 2 days ago,
unless
I don't think that's the case.
Oh wait, holy shit! They just cut him.
When?
Like 2 days ago.
Today?
2 days ago.
No way.
Okay.
That's so funny.
All right. So wow, that's news to me. I didn't realize they cut him. Shout out to Mitch Sella in chat.
Jesus. Wow. So Al-Haj Shabazz.
Yeah, but
either way, T.Y. Hilton is up against a nobody.
It'll probably Kareem Jackson played the slot last year. Hold on, I'm seeing if he probably will move there again.
No, I think they kick him outside because what's his name went on IR.
Hold on. No, dude, it's probably him. Hang on.
Then they're gonna have this guy play outside.
He's not good either, though. Kareem Jackson's bad. Yeah, okay. PFF has Kareem Jackson in the slot and Robert Nelson on the outside.
Is that how it is now?
Man.
All right, so then he's up against Kareem Jackson, who's allowing the 5th most fantasy points per snap in coverage. He's really bad. Either way, T.Y. Hilton gets a good matchup. Yeah. It's either Jackson who's bad or this nobody who just got signed off of waivers. Or not even waivers. But Moncrief gets A.J. Boye, who ranks 7th best in fantasy points allowed per target. Tough matchup. This is not a professional podcast, ladies and gentlemen.
No, we're professional, dude. So yeah. No, that's a really good matchup too. I mean, it's still the best matchup on the board.
Yeah.
Granted, I don't know much about Robert Nelson, but I mean, you're still not going to play Philip Dorsett ever. It's still a bad matchup for Moncrief. I know Boye moves around the formation a little bit. He might follow Moncrief around, so it's totally possible.
He's been super good this year.
He's been really.
You know how I did adjusted for cornerback quality wide receiver fantasy points per target stats.
Yeah.
I did that for cornerbacks too, and AJ Boye was like third best, right behind like Talib and Chris Harris Jr.
Yeah, he's been insanely good. That's why I'm not super stoked about Luck this week. I'm more excited about Hilton. Houston's been good against the pass.
Yeah.
They've been good. They've been okay against the run, pretty solid against the pass. Clowney should be back this week from what I see. It's probably going to be a lower scoring game than people might think, but I think Hilton gets at it, man. He has what, nine plus targets in his last 3 or 4 games with healthy Luck on the field. And then, dude, I like Gore. You in on Gore?
Dude, every single week you try to get me in on Gore, and every single week I'm like, dude, that's gross. Why would you try to get me on Gore? I don't know. So Houston is allowing the 5th fewest passing yards per game. They're allowing the 14th most rushing yards per game. That's kind of good, especially if Clowney doesn't play.
He's going to play.
Gore just seems like a no-ceiling guy who, is going to get you 60 rushing yards, 50% chance at a rushing touchdown, and then 30 receiving yards. Does that sound right?
Yeah, except I think he has multi-touchdown upside. Like, he has had games with multiple carries, like within the 5.
Wasn't Green Bay his only multiple touchdown game?
Yeah,
I think he has like 60 total yards.
But that was his absolute like worst matchup on the season. Like, it is.
Green Bay's been bad against running backs though recently. But they weren't bad yet then. Clay Matthews played that week. But okay,
it's within his range of outcomes that he gets 2 goal line touchdowns. That's the thing for me with Gore.
Fuck you. Robert Turbin got goal line carries last week.
Yeah, they mix things up, but Gore still is like within the top 10 in red zone.
No, I don't know.
And within the 10.
They're gonna get inside the 10 for sure. They're gonna get inside the red zone. But I think those Turbin carries scare me. Why don't you ramble about something, and I'll pull up for sure what those numbers are.
No. I pulled up Gore earlier today. He's within the top 10 in carries, within the 20, and within the 10.
Recently?
Over the season.
Yeah, but not recently.
Man, quit being it, dude.
All right. So I pulled it up.
Okay.
No, I didn't. I lied. I screwed it up.
I mean, are you talking about against the Jets game? I mean, they were winning 41. I mean, they won 41-10. Like, I'm not worried about if Turbin had work in that game.
All right. So I'm looking at goal line carries. Last week, Gore had 1, Turbin had 1. Week 12, Gore had 5. Week 11, Turbin had 2. Week 11, Turbin had 2. Gore had 2. Or Gore had 1. Week 9, Gore had 4 or 3. Week 8, Gore had 1. Week 7, it was split 50-50. Week 4, it was split 50-50. I guess you're right. I mean, I would like it to be a 100% split. I'd like Turbin to just go away there. But
I don't think you're – I mean, for 4,800, you can't really complain about a guy who's seeing, like, the majority of the work and has the possibility for multi-goal line carries. You know, I mean, he's cheap.
What's his total yardage ceiling? 80 yards?
I think he has a 100-yard game. He might have 1. I mean, you're not like – you're not –
I don't hate him. I don't.
Dude, guess who his last 100-yard game was against? The Texans.
Oh. What?
The Texans. His only 100-yard game was against the Texans.
All right. I mean, it's just hard to hate him at that price and
right.
and the floor. I'm not with you on the ceiling, though. I'm sorry.
Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, he's 4,800. He's a big home favorite. There we go. So, all right. Are you in on Fuller? I think Fuller's someone you can talk about, but I'm not like stoked about him.
I'm not gonna make that argument. No way.
Yeah, I think if you're bringing somebody back, like you want to stack this game, it's Fuller, but I'm just not. And with Lamar Miller, he's been banged up. Not excited about him. You in on Lamar Miller? He is cheap. He's 5,100, but like he's been bad, man. He's like dealing with the shoulder thing.
Yeah, he's been really bad. I've heard a few sharp people mention him as a contrarian play. I guess the matchup's pretty good. I think Indianapolis is 8th in fantasy points per game against running backs. But yeah, he's been really bad. He was, I think, the leading rusher last week was Jonathan Grimes on 5 carries. Yeah, he's hurt, man. I'm not on it.
I think he's hurt. He's been in and out of games the last few weeks. It's hard to play a guy who's hurt. But yeah, he did have a big game against Indy last time they played. He had 36 DraftKings points. So if you have some inkling that he's healthy, maybe, but tough. Yeah, and CJ Fedorowicz, someone mentioned him in the chat. He's in play for sure. The Colts allow tons of receptions to tight ends, but he's gotten pretty expensive. He's like 3,900. I'd probably rather play Ladarius Green. Anybody else you want to talk about?
We should probably talk about Dwayne Allen if we have any casuals listening.
No. The answer is no.
What about Jack Doyle?
The answer is no. Can we move on?
All right, let's move on.
So Bengals at the Browns. This one I'm like surprised the Bengals are only 5-point favorites, but they are. The Browns are legit terrible. Robert Griffin's supposedly starting. On my notes, I just wrote LOL. We have Andy Dalton against bad passing defense.
I love Dalton this week.
Yeah, great spot for Jeremy Hill. Great spot for pretty much the Bengals in general. Bad spot for everybody on the Browns. You like guys on the Bengals? I know I do.
Yeah, I'm all over that. I think Dalton's my cash game quarterback right now as it stands. What do you think about that?
I'm on Cousins, but I like Dalton too. I got a couple guys that I like. It's tough to like narrow down a cash game quarterback this week, but I think the play is Dalton plus Hill, and then in cash for my cash lineups, and then just sit back and put my feet up and play Bengals defense possibly too. I like Dalton. I like Bengals D. I like Hill. I like Cousins a little more. We'll talk Cousins in a bit, but
all right.
Yeah, no, I like Dalton. He kind of got it together last week, and I mean, this is a spot where Eifert should be able to have a big game, so that's helpful for him too. I think Eifert's a great tournament play. But yeah, someone just mentioned Dalton having bad games against the Browns. This is a common opponent for him. So
I forgot about that narrative.
That's Dalton is not as good against opponents that he's are familiar with him.
Do we buy into that?
It's like,
I mean, the stats are like legit.
Yeah,
but like, is that a real thing?
It's pretty sticky for Dalton. Joe Goodberry.
I've never heard of that with any other quarterback though.
Joe Goodberry's been charting it, because he's a Bengals beat guy, but I mean, it's a thing it seems to be a thing for Dalton, but I mean, the Browns are really bad, man. Browns are really bad. Yeah.
So, Eifert's the top tight end play this week for sure. Cleveland gave up 67 yards, 3 touchdowns, 6 receptions to Martellus Bennett. Gave up 134 yards and a touchdown to Jason Witten. Gave up 73 yards to Reed. 100-yard games to Dennis Pitta and Rob Gronkowski. They're just hemorrhaging points to the tight end position. They're giving up the most fantasy points per game to tight ends. Tyler Eifert is a guy I'm on every week. Always talk about his stats for tournaments. He has arguably the highest upside of any tight end outside of Gronk and Jordan Reed. amazing in the red zone. Andy Dalton is hyper efficient when targeting him. And then LaFell's in a great spot. He should be shadowed by Joe Hayden, and don't let that concern you because Hayden's been terrible all year. And then in the slot, Cleveland is giving up, I think, the 4th most fantasy points per game to slot receivers. I'll have to double check that.
It's been bad, but I think they're moving. Jamar Taylor is now in the slot, right? He's been like okay this season, but he has stunk for the rest of his career. And then Crowell is a guy. Someone mentioned him in chat too, and I have talked about him a little bit this week. He's 3,900, and he's seen 12 targets over the last 2 weeks or something. He's like in play, but he is not someone to really get excited about. But he's, for 3,900, he'll probably hit value in this game.
I'm going to be honest. I did not realize he had 17 targets in his last 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I'll have to check and see what Duke Johnson did over that stretch. And before his 16 carry, 44-yard day last week.
Yeah.
He had 8 carries for 10 yards, 9 for 23, 6 for 4. That's just super gross. He's definitely not someone I was on and probably definitely am still not on.
I guess he can hit value. I don't know. He's definitely not someone you really want to use in tournaments, I don't think. But I don't know. Are you playing Robert Griffin, dude?
Absolutely not. No. Worst quarterback in the league behind the worst offensive line. There's no argument I could make there.
Yep.
He could be like $2,000 on DraftKings. And that's
Boyd or LaFell?
So. What's that?
Boyd or LaFell?
I still like LaFell.
I'm not excited about either though.
I don't think he's a good wide receiver, but I think he's in a fine spot.
Yep, fair enough. Hill is I'm jamming him into cash lineups.
Yeah.
Anything. And I mean you're on Dalton. I'm more on Cousins, but I think there's arguments for both.
I like Cousins, and we'll get to him when we get there. Jeremy Cow game. He hasn't been efficient in the slightest. He's going to get all the volume. He's going to get all the goal line, red zone work. He's getting targets. He's getting carries. Not much else I can add there. It's a great spot. That's it for me.
All right. Next game, Steelers at the Bills. This game, the line's moving towards the Steelers more and more. Pittsburgh defense kind of coming on lately. Big Ben's on the road. Le'Veon Bell. We look at Latavius just smashed the Bills recently. Brown has his targets have been down in games where they're winning. So you on the Steelers, man?
So tell me what you told me before about Antonio Brown, because I think you were dead on with that.
Oh man, I gotta find it. So
you want me to say it?
You can go ahead and say it. I can't even find it. I got it.
All right, because I stole your argument from my article. So over the last 2 weeks, he has 13 targets, but he also has 4 touchdowns over that span. Oh no, I did lose it. Crap. But he's in a great spot this week. He's up against Stephon Gilmore. Gilmore is allowing the 7th most yards per target. Darby is allowing the 24th most fantasy points per snap in coverage. And targeted by opposing passers, he's allowing a 106 opposing passer rating, which ranks 21st worst. He was 2% owned on Fantasy Aces Thursday game. if Buffalo can keep this competitive, as Vegas seems to suspect they will, with a -3-point spread, Brown should be in for a big game. Is that right?
I don't know, man. I don't know what to do with Brown. Like, I'm just gonna play Beckham and just like not even fuck with Brown. But
dude, he was 2% owned. That's crazy.
Yeah, he'll probably be low owned. It's just like it's a good spot in the idea that people will be on Green more than they're on Brown. But it's a weird spot in that the Steelers are favorites and they've been like winning games and like blowing out their opponents. I mean, they blew out the Giants. They blew out let's see. No, Indy. That's right. Never mind. Indy luck didn't play. So I mean, they blew out the Giants, but like, I don't know. Are they going to blow out the Bills? Maybe, but they're not like super heavy favorites, and Ben kind of stinks on the road. But it seems like Brown gets more targets on the road too, since the Steelers aren't as like, hold as big a lead.
He's better. He's better at home throughout his career. My thing with him is he's an awesome leverage play on Le'Veon Bell. He's going to be super highly owned.
Yeah.
And like, what are the chances that Brown scores Le'Veon Bell? Yeah, and Green too. Which I think was kind of fluky-ish and against the Giants, who are bad at tight ends.
Yeah, no, I agree. But I still like Green. I mean, this is just kind of a weird spot for the Steelers offense because like you want to be on them, but they're on the road. And it's like Le'Veon Bell versus the, David Johnson. Le'Veon Bell's $9K now. It's pretty expensive. The tournament ceiling. Not like he's going to score much more than 30. So yeah, as a fade from Green, play Brown for sure. But I don't really see the Bills having like a ton of success here. I mean, do you think the Bills are going to put a ton of points on the board?
No, I don't. And we should also talk about McCoy losing red zone work to Mike Gillislee, who's been fantastic at it throughout his career. I mean, McCoy's kind of been this guy who's really like gotten a ton of his fantasy production on super long runs. And everyone's always been like, that's unsustainable. But, he's just done it so consistently that I'd argue that that's just a facet of his game at this point. But he is going to lose red zone work to Mike Gillislee, and that is a concern, and it does cap his upside and possibly puts him below the Melvin Gordon's, DeMarco Murray kind of tier.
Yeah, it does. I mean, because it's like the last week it was like McCoy is like smashing, like get me a touchdown. And it was like, nah, Mike Gillislee. I mean, you want these multiple touchdowns for your guys to hit those like 30, 40-point ceilings. And if they're not going to get those multiple touchdowns, they're not going to hit those ceilings. So, McCoy's a good play, but the ceiling is like not as nearly as high as it should be because of the stupid bullshit that they're doing. You look at like the other guys in like a similar price range. I mean, McCoy's like 8,200. Like, I'm not paying 8,200 for a dude who's going to come out at the goal line that I have to rely on. But he did get 7 targets last week. So, I mean, it's like he's getting crazy workload, but he doesn't have the ceiling that he should. That, like, I think Melvin Gordon has a higher ceiling. It's not as good of a matchup, though. Does that make sense?
No, I completely agree.
Yeah. Good play, but tough to pay. I would rather play Odell Beckham for 8,000 than McCoy for 8,200. You agree?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Do you want to play Sammy Watkins? 9 targets last week.
He has a broken bone in his foot. I don't play wide receivers with a broken bone in their foot.
All right. Fair enough. We moving on?
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk Cardinals at the Dolphins. 70% of tickets are coming in on Arizona, but the line is moving towards Miami. This is kind of a weird game. Palmer's actually been like okay recently. And then DJ's been insane, but he's up to 9,800. You want to talk about DJ? And I'm going to go pee.
You cut out for me, so I'm gonna ask you if you had to pick Le'Veon Bell or David Johnson, who would it be? And then I'm gonna go get a beer and then be right back.
That just abandons me while I'm trying to abandon him. Anyways, David Johnson, 9,800 is like really tough for tournaments. He's like somebody you can definitely fade in tournaments, but I mean, when he's getting 30 points a week, he's pretty hard to not use in cash games. So I'm fine with using David Johnson in cash games. I probably want to try and jam him into cash games. I think this is a week like last week you could jam Le'Veon and DJ in. I'm not so sure you can do it this week.
I think everyone's gonna try to.
Yeah, I know Hodge is gonna try, but yeah, I'm not sure that you can do that. I don't know. Why don't you talk how good David Johnson has been and Palmer, and I have to pee, man.
All right, yeah, go ahead and pee. So I have to talk about how good Carson Palmer's been. I feel like that's kind of hard. He did have 300 yards and 3 touchdowns last week. He had 280 the week. Oh shit, he actually has been really good. So he has over 300 yards or 300 yards or more in 4 of his last 7 games. 2 of those games were 2 touchdown games. 2 were 3 touchdown games. I don't know. I'm definitely not as good at potting solo as Johnny is when I run to go get a beer. David Johnson's just a man. He's had a bell cow game in every single week since Chris Johnson's injury. He's basically like a wide receiver 2.5, wide receiver 3, plus a solid RB1. I think I did the math, and David Johnson ranked 3rd in rushing fantasy points per game, and 27th among all receivers in receiving fantasy points per game, which is just. But finally, DraftKings must have read my bell cow article from the summer and priced Le'Veon Bell and David Johnson more closer to where they should be. I think I prefer him over Le'Veon Bell this week. And Johnny, make the case for Carson Palmer, because I'm going to be honest, I did not know he's performed as well as he had since week 7.
So he's been like a floor play recently. He hasn't really had like a huge ceiling, but I think a big part of it has been that David Johnson's been so good in the receiving game that, like, as David Johnson has big games, Palmer does too. Like, he's getting sacked a ton, but he's put up you look at his last 5 games, he has 3 touchdowns, 1 touchdown, 2 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, and 3 300 or more yard games in that span, as well as a 289-yard game against Atlanta. The only game that he had under 200 yards was against Minnesota, where he just kind of got smashed, and makes sense there. Like, Minnesota's still a good passing defense. So this is a good spot for Palmer if the Dolphins are as bad as they were last week. I don't think the Dolphins are as bad as they were last week, but I don't think the Dolphins are as good as they were the weeks prior to that. What do you think about, like, do you think the Dolphins are good?
I don't think they're good, but I don't know. I'm also still not really buying into this Cardinals offense outside of David Johnson and the occasional Larry Fitzgerald in a good matchup.
Yeah, but I mean, like, yeah, fair enough. But
since week 7, though, Carson Palmer ranks 2nd, just behind Kirk Cousins in passing yards per game. That's pretty cool, I guess.
I mean, he's been okay, man. But it's like an okay spot for him. Though I'm never stoked about The Cardinals traveling across country. They've been kind of bad this year when they've traveled across the country. But,
Miami is giving up the 11th most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks, and they rank, let's see, where in opposing passer rating. They're a little below average or above average in opposing passer rating. I don't know. It's just which wide receiver would you like in this?
Jermaine Gresham.
Yeah, right.
We do need to talk about Jermaine Gresham, though.
Do we really?
Yeah, dude. Yes, 16 targets over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, but in the prior 32 games, he has 16 targets.
Let me look at his targets over the last 5. 5, 6, 2, 10, 6. 2 touchdowns. They're like using him in the red zone. He's 2,500. He's not exciting, though, but they're using him. He's probably better than Michael Floyd.
Funny.
But
why?
Why Jermaine Gresham? Like, if he scores a touchdown, he meets value at 2,500.
I don't think that's ever going to happen. He's had last year he had only one game over 55 yards. It was 63 yards. This year he has 0 games over 55 yards. 2 years before that he had 2 games over 55 yards, none over 70. I don't know. He has no ceiling. Bruce Arians never uses his tight ends. We know this. I'm not willing to fall for this trap based on a
I mean, with their receivers banged up, Palmer can't throw downfield. They're actually using him. They're not using him a ton, but they're using him. He has 2 touchdowns.
I mean, they're using him like New Orleans is using John Kuhn.
No, they're using him way more than that. I mean, he had 10 targets against Atlanta, dude.
Yeah, and that was an outlier. And then outside of that, he had 2 targets the week before that.
But I think the majority of his targets are coming in the red zone, right?
We don't know that. He has 2 touchdowns for the season.
I believe I don't have my notes in front of me, but I believe the majority of his targets are coming in the red zone.
I can pull that data real quick if you want to talk about something else.
I'm not out here saying that like Jermaine Gresham is like the GOAT play, but I don't think he's like a terrible play.
I don't even think it's a play, which is where I am.
Fair enough. I think he's in play. He has 5 red zone targets. He had 2 against Atlanta.
He has 2 targets inside the 10. One of which he turned into a touchdown. He has 3 end zone targets for this season. One of which he turned into a touchdown. I'm not on him.
He's definitely a puntable play, but he's not an exciting play. All right. Are you in on so with Devontae Parker probably getting shadowed by Patrick Peterson, are you in on Landry? I like Landry this week.
Yeah, man, it's been a good spot all season. We've talked about this. Arizona, even when they've had Tyrann Mathieu in the slot, they've been bad to slot receivers. They're giving up the 4th most fantasy points per game to wide receivers out of the slot. He hasn't really done anything for a while, but the matchup's good, and it makes sense with Parker pretty much negated in this game. An interesting thing about Patrick Peterson is he is one of the best cornerbacks at pressing corners, at pressing wide receivers, and that's something that Parker has struggled with since college. Matt Harmon's written a lot of great work about this. So I think really Parker is absolutely not in play, and he's going to get completely shut down if Peterson shadows. Even if not, he's going to see a ton of Peterson anyway, and it really just makes sense that he shadows. Landry, the concern with him is prior to his 14 target game last week, he hadn't seen double-digit targets since week 10. But I mean, I'm kind of on him. His price has gone down.
You said Landry hasn't seen double-digit targets since week 10? He saw 14 against Baltimore.
Yeah, I said prior to his 14 target game last week.
Okay.
He hasn't seen double digits since week 4.
Yeah. But I think this is another spot where he should probably get back up to his targets. He's not. I mean, I'm not like excited about him, but I think he's in play for sure. The Cardinals have kind of stunk against the slot, though. Tyvon Branch is back, and it's not like the best matchup for him. And I mean, do you think the Dolphins can run on the Cardinals? I don't think they're going to really have a ton of running success.
No, that's like been the worst running back matchup outside of Baltimore this season.
Yeah,
they're actually allowing less yards per carry to running backs.
So I think that like the idea of using David Johnson and Landry as a correlation play is totally in play. Anything else you want to say about this game?
No. Do you want to make a case for Deion Sims? Because you like bad tight ends?
No.
Weren't involved in the offense?
I don't.
All right,
I don't play tight ends against the Cardinals, but I'm down to play tight ends against the Dolphins when they're missing 2 linebackers.
All right, you got me.
You
win this round.
Broncos at the Titans. This is an interesting one. So another bad quarterback who's been okay recently. Simeon's been okay because like the Broncos just can't run the ball because Devontae Booker sucks. So I'm going to let you take it away on Sanders versus Demaryius Thomas. I know you have a stance there.
Are you talking or did you freeze up?
I was talking.
You there?
Talk Sanders
versus
Demaryius. Who are you on?
I want Sanders because he's in the GOAT spot against Antoine Valentino Blake this week.
All right.
Do you remember Antoine Blake?
Yeah, Valentino. He's so bad.
So last year, you and me, we made a ton of money on 2 cornerbacks who we consistently played against, except when Calvin Johnson played against them because he was dead. And that was Brandon Browner and Antoine Blake. And Brandon Browner's completely out of the league, will never be seen from again. That's how bad he was last year. Antoine Blake, though, is now or was a back, but they just released Parrish Cox, and PFF is projecting it's not a lock. It's either him or some no-name rookie. But we're projecting we think Antoine Blake is going to get the start. He got the start last time Parrish Cox was out with an injury. Last season, no cornerback gave up as many fantasy points as Blake. He was our second worst graded cornerback behind only Browner. He led all the cornerbacks in missed tackles with 28. The next closest had 16, gave up over 1,000 yards in coverage, the only cornerback to do so. He allowed 8 touchdowns into his coverage, second most of the position. He gave up 6 plays of 40 or more yards, most in the league, was routinely burnt deep. He was so bad last season, he had to change his name to Valentino, which is true. You can check the depth chart. You can Google that. Emmanuel Sanders is going to draw him on 42% of his routes. Demaryius is going to get Jason McCourty on about 44% of his routes. McCourty is allowing the 22nd fewest fantasy points per target. I mean, he's not amazing, but he's definitely Tennessee's best cornerback and far better than Antoine Blake. The issue is if Paxton Lynch is the quarterback, he's absolutely not in play. If Trevor Simeon's the quarterback, he is in play. And I like him. I don't love him just because of, I think the targets have kind of leaned more Demaryius as of late, outside of maybe the Kansas City game. How much do you like Emmanuel Sanders, Johnny?
Love him in tournaments. Not sure about. I've seen him recommended in cash. I think maybe you could, but it's tough for me to trust that passing offense. I like the idea of Simeon and Sanders in tournaments. Simeon's actually been he's been okay the last couple of weeks, and he's shown us twice this season that he has a ceiling. He has those 30-point games in him, and if he has a 30-point game, it's probably going to be Sanders, who explodes. He's the downfield catch the 40-yard bombs kind of guy. DT is not doing that.
He's also a better receiver than Demaryius Thomas in general.
Yeah, no, I agree. But Tennessee has Tennessee's been bad against quarterbacks recently, just bad against the pass recently. A stat that Sal had, Tennessee's allowed 3 straight top 12 QB1 fantasy finishes, and 6 of the last 7 quarterbacks to face them have finished as a quarterback 1. So this is a great spot for them in the passing game, and they can't run the ball. The Broncos cannot run the ball. Devontae Booker is averaging 3.5 yards per carry since week 7. The Broncos are averaging less than 3 yards per carry over the last 3 or 4 games. They can't run, man. And you know what? I want quarterbacks and passing offenses when they can't run the ball against bad passing defenses. This is the spot, And then Mariota has Delaney and DeMarco who are going to catch passes in the weakest spot for the Broncos. This is a game that could sneakily go over the 43-point over/under. What do you think?
All right, so I'm hoping that Thorman can chime into the chat in a little bit, but I agree with you. And I think you're making really good arguments. My only hesitations are Tennessee is home, they're favored, and what worked so well for them in the beginning of the season to kind of disguise their deficiencies in the secondary was that they could kind of just grind to a Dallas Cowboys-esque pace by running the ball. And I think that's what they're going to do this week against Denver, who's really struggled against the run while being fantastic through the air.
But I think the Titans are similar to the Cowboys in the sense that while they play slow, they're so bad against the pass that while they slow down the game while they're on offense, they can't slow down the whole game because they just give up chunk yardage through the air. They're allowing QB1 games to quarterbacks. You know what I mean? It's happening against them because they're strong against the run and just bad against the pass, and then the Broncos can't run the ball. I wouldn't say, I think this game's going to score 55 points. No. But do I think it could go over the 43.5? I would bet the over if I had to pick.
If this is a quarterback to get excited about, I kind of jump. But otherwise, I'm hesitant, and I'm kind of liking DeMarco Murray a lot.
Yes.
Denver is allowing the second fewest passing yards per game, but the 4th most rushing yards per game. This is how you beat them. You run the ball against them. I like him a lot this week. Yeah. And
you throw to the tight end.
Exactly. I like Delaney Walker a lot this week. I wrote him up for my Contrarian Plays article. He was 1% owned on Aces, which makes no sense. Yep. He ranks 3rd in fantasy points per game behind only played on Thursday night. And Jordan Reed, who's either not going to play or is going to play hurt against the Eagles, who are fantastic against tight ends. So Denver's allowing 25% of their total receiving production to tight ends, which ranks tied for 4th highest in the league. Denver's allowing the 5th most targets to tight ends, the 3rd fewest targets to wide receivers, the fewest fantasy points per game to wide receivers. It just makes sense. If you're going to target them through the air, you're going to funnel it to your stud tight end who's a better receiver than all of your wide receivers.
Yeah, and I just want to say the last time Mariota played a similar defense when he played the Chargers, who really limit wide receivers, get smashed by the tight end. He had 32 DraftKings points. So, this is kind of a similar spot. Not to say the Chargers are as good as Denver, but they are a similar defense in that they rush the passer and they limit wide receivers. So this is not as bad of a spot for Mariota as people might think. He's a sneaky tournament play to pair with Delaney Walker because no one is going to use him. But I'm not going to overload on him. You have 100 lineups, you put him in 5 with Delaney. It's not crazy. Sound about right?
Sure.
Don't play Devontae Booker. Does that sound about right?
No.
All right. So next game, Vikings Jags. Yeah. I'm not playing a Viking. Maybe Vikings defense. I'm not playing Allen Robinson. I'm not doing it. I don't care if he's 5,000. Not happening. If Denard Robinson and Ivory don't play, I'm going to play TJ Yeldon possibly in cash games. Am I retarded?
Who was that? You cut out.
If Chris Ivory and Denard Robinson are out, I'm probably going to play TJ Yeldon in cash games. Am I retarded?
Robinson got hurt last week?
He got hurt last week. He's not playing.
Wow. That's a great call. Hashtag bell cow games. He's cheap. Blah blah blah. Whatever. You're not on Diggs at all. Again, shadowed by Jalen Ramsey probably.
I think Diggs is okay, an okay play. He is down in price, but
he practiced in full this week.
Yeah, I mean he's definitely in play. This is just such a shit game. And I think Ramsey is the kind of guy who will give Diggs trouble. He's a really physical, in your face, and he will shadow him into the slot. They have no trouble letting him move into the slot, so you can expect to see Ramsey on Diggs for all of his snaps. Mm-hmm. So, he probably sees 10, 12 targets, but what are 10, 12 targets against Ramsey versus 10, 12 targets against, you look at when he played Washington, when he played Detroit, when he played Chicago, he was away from any reasonably good cornerback, and that's when he smashed. This is not those spots. You know what I mean? Yeah. But he's okay. Yeah. He's a tournament play. Volume play.
So when I'm always blown away by how you kind of reach the same conclusions as I do. When I'll do this crazy stat based study, and then you'll kind of just be like, yeah, bruh, of course Diggs has had an easy cornerback schedule this year. So I did this big study I put out I think on Wednesday. So I just built out every fantasy points per target allowed by each cornerback, and then I tracked every wide receiver's target against each cornerback, and I built out their expected fantasy points per target based on all these cornerbacks. And basics was Stephon Diggs had the third easiest cornerback schedule of any cornerback to see at least 50 targets. Devonta Adams had the easiest. Michael Thomas had the second easiest. And then Stephon Diggs had the third easiest. So you're right. He did blow up, and he was amazing, and he was kind of in that must-start range for us every week. But he also did benefit from having a super easy cornerback schedule. And Ramsey hasn't been shut down. He is still a rookie, but he's at least average in pretty much every statistic that I look at on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah, he's been one of the best rookie shadow corners we've seen. You don't see a rookie come into the league and just shadow the top receiver ever. But
especially in the slot too. How many shadows move to the slot besides Revis?
Yeah, and I mean he got into Steve Smith's head. The dude is just he's punching people in the face at the line. He's really going in it. So I'm not stoked about. I'm not stoked about Diggs. I'm a big Diggs believer. I went to Maryland. I watched Diggs. I got smashed while Diggs did all these things on on the field, but just not, I'm not about not really about him this week. He's definitely in playing tournaments because like he should see 10 to 12 targets, but I think the Vikings should probably control this game. That's why I kind of like Yeldon. I think he probably sees 7, 8, 9 targets, as Bortles dumps the balls off because he's a piece of shit. Sound about right?
Yeah.
Vikings D, moving on?
Yeah.
All right. So Redskins at the Eagles. This game, dude, I'm like all over the Redskins, but I don't want to play Rob Kelly ever. Eagles stink, man. I think the Redskins O-line should be able to hold up against the Eagles pass rush, and I want to play Cousins and Cash, man. What do you think?
All right, make the argument.
For Cousins?
Yeah.
So Cousins is just like the big thing for Cousins is he's throwing for tons of yardage, and that's a big bonus on DraftKings. You look at his going back to week 7, 300, 458, 262, 375, 449, 271. And over that span, he has 2 or more touchdowns in all but 2 of those games, 4 of those 6 games. So when you're throwing for like 300 yards a game, almost pretty much all those, 4 of those 6, it means you're getting that 3-point bonus, and that's just an extra touchdown. And then he's throwing for 2+ touchdowns in most of those spots. He's been sacked. The most times he's ever been sacked this season is 3 times. He's not getting pressured. The Eagles are just falling apart. They're looking like they might just be a bad team. Their cornerbacks are possibly the worst in the league. So, I'm going to let Cousins throw it against bad corners with the O-line protecting him. You don't like him?
So, no. I like him. Over Dalton, I don't know. Maybe. Like, honestly, it's a good play. It's just Dalton's cheaper, and I typically yield to the cheaper when it's more of a toss-up. Yeah, so Cousins is – I wish this game was at home for Washington, but Cousins has been flat out amazing. Real an awesome play every single week. This is kind of what we projected with I remember having this conversation with Lake, Joshua Lake, highly recommended follow, for MFL 10's quarterback thing is what we projected he would lead the team, lead the league in pass attempts. He has this great receiving core, Deshaun Jackson, Jamison Crowder, Pierre Garçon, Jordan Reed. So even though he is probably a mediocre quarterback, he's just set up to be so successful. And shout out to Scott McLuhan for putting that all together. So yeah, he looks great. But what about the matchup? Because if you look on paper, you see the Eagles have been pretty good from a fantasy points per game standpoint against opposing quarterbacks. But here's the thing about that. Their 4 worst games have come over the last 5 weeks. Week 8, they gave up 28 fantasy points to Dak Prescott, 26 to Aaron Rodgers in Week 12, 25 to Russell Wilson in Week 11, 25 to Andy Dalton in Week 13. And then outside of that, they really haven't faced tough quarterbacks. So, yeah, I like him. I like him a lot. I think he's a great play. I think he'll be probably kind of highly owned on tournaments, but again, with quarterbacks, it's not really something to worry about too much. He's a really good play. I don't know if I like him more than Dalton just yet, but I like him a lot.
Yeah. So the thing about Philly is like their only thing that they do really successfully, they probably have one of the best pass rushes in the league, but the Redskins have one of the best pass protecting O-lines in the league. They've allowed 16 sacks, which I think might be, I got to double check, but I think that's second fewest. They're good, against a pass rush. And that's why I am not that concerned about Philly, especially because while they pass protect Cousins, he's just going to pick them apart. I'm just like I'm not worried about the Eagles. They're starting to fall apart. They're not playing well. Doug Peterson's like a fucking idiot. The team is like they're like they want him fired and stuff. Cousins, man, it's just such a good spot. So I think I'm just gonna play him in cash and move on. The only reason I think there's like an argument for him over Andy Dalton is just because the Redskins just throw the ball. Like they don't care. They don't really. I mean, they run it a little bit, but they mostly just throw it. They let Cousins sling the ball, and they throw downfield more than the Bengals. I like Cousins a ton, and like you said earlier, people need to stop worrying about ownership percentages for quarterbacks. Just play the guys in tournaments that you're on. We'll talk. Ryan Hodge came in second place in the King of the Beach, and he used the chalk quarterback. You don't have to go crazy with quarterback. If you think Cousins is the best play him. Garcon's in a good spot. Deshaun Jackson's in a good spot. The outside cornerbacks are really where Eagles are bad. They get beat downfield. The Malcolm Jenkins thing is weird, right? I mean, he allows like a ton of points per route against, but the Eagles as a whole are like okay against the slot, right? I mean, that thing just has confused me all year. What's the deal with that?
Yeah. So let me pull up. I wrote about this week. Against the slot, they're allowing the third fewest fantasy points per game to wide receivers out of the slot. Malcolm Jenkins is allowing the second most fantasy coverage of any quote-unquote cornerback projected to start this week. I think that's kind of like the Giants with Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, where DRC is amazing, but the surrounding cast kind of is at fault for putting them in the top 10 in fantasy points allowed per slot. Just because, a slot wide receiver is going to see 50% against that slot cornerback, but it'll also get matchups against linebackers and safeties. And against the Giants, that's where they do a ton of damage. Yeah. And I guess for Philly, Jenkins is allowing a lot, but everyone else is kind of just shutting down slot cornerbacks. The thing to get excited about Jamel Crowder is that he saw 2 targets against Jenkins in week 6, and he caught both of them for 37 yards and a touchdown. Garcon is up against Nolan Carroll. He's PFF's 9th worst graded cornerback. I'm not really on any of these guys. I'm all about Deshaun Jackson this week. He's up against Leotis McKelvin. Philadelphia is allowing 16.8 fantasy points per game to wide receivers lined up to their quarterback's right, which is where Deshaun Jackson runs 43% of his routes, highest on the team. McKelvin's allowing the most fantasy points per snap, the most fantasy points per snap in coverage, the 3rd most fantasy points per target. That is really hard to be that bad, and he has been that bad. But most importantly, I think, is that he's been routinely burnt deep this season. No defender has given up more plays of 30 or more yards or 40 or more yards this season. Jackson leads the league in percentage of targets to go for 30 or more yards, 12.7%. For the season, only T.Y. Hilton has more total plays of 30 or more yards. I think he's a great play. He's super low owned on both DraftKings and FanDuel. He's low owned, low price. He was the 38th highest price wide receiver on FanDuel, which is where you want him. I think he's an awesome play.
Yeah, dude. So
Pat Thorman's on him too.
Here's where I'm at on the skins receivers. I think Garcon is a guy you can play in cash. He's just seeing like steady volume. Recently, I think it hurts him a little bit if Reed plays, and then Deshaun is like your definite pivot in tournaments because Garcon's going to be popular this week. I see a lot of people talking about him, so we could totally see a Green Bay or a Dallas game out of Deshaun, and he's cheap, 5,200, and Eagles have been getting beat deep for years, like 2 or 3 years. So yes,
Yeah.
I am in on Deshaun in tournaments for sure, especially if you want to roll Cousins in tournaments, have some exposure to Deshaun. That'll differentiate you from the Garcon lineups. There's going to be a lot of Garcon. Not as stoked about Jamison Crowder if this week if Reed plays. He's more of like the floor play, I think, for receivers on the team. Especially now that he's 5,600, he's more expensive than Garcon and Djax, and they're all kind of seeing like similar workloads. So now that he's more expensive than the other guys, I'm a little less on him. He's more of a guy I like, at like 5K and under. Not playing Reed at all, not with the shoulder, and with the Eagles. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
I mean, are you interested in Rob Kelly, man? Like, people were talking about him in cash. I'm not doing it.
Dude, he's done nothing on the road this year. He's basically Washington's LeGarrette Blount, and this is not the matchup to play him. Move off that. Don't do it,
dude.
I'll tell you when to play Rob Kelly. It's not this.
Everyone is stuck on the Green Bay game, man, where he had 100 and whatever yards and 3 touchdowns. That's like not a normal range of outcomes for him at all. Like, no, just no. Nah. He doesn't catch passes, man. Like, if you watch the dude trying to catch the ball, he literally, like, he doesn't know how to catch it. He's like, like, come on, man. Just no, I'm not doing it. So next game, are you playing Eagles? Ertz, J-Matt, I think are in play if you're bringing it back, but I'm not like stoked about them.
Nah.
I mean, they'll avoid Josh Norman, so I think they're like interesting, but I'm not like all about them. Sound about right?
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Jets, 49ers. I'm going back to Cap, man. You with me?
I mean, it's super risky. I don't know if I'll do that in cash. I can't do that in cash. I like it in tournaments, though, for sure.
Yeah, I think he's a great tournament play.
Matt Forte, too.
Yeah, so I like Forte. I'll let you talk, Robbie Anderson. 49ers are favorites, man. 49ers are favorites. This is like –
that is bad.
Like a big deal, So back to Cap in tournaments. I think he's going to be under 10% owned. It's a great spot for him. Can't run on the Jets, but I think that means more opportunities for him to run the ball on his own. I've seen some talk about Carlos Hyde. I'm not really stoked about him because you can't run on the Jets. You should see some more pass work. But I'm back on Vance McDonald too. He's the only bankable pass catcher target, and he got a big contract recently. So those are guys I'm on. I'll let you talk the Jets.
Yeah, it's like so hard to make a case for anyone on the Jets. Quincy Enunwa's in the great spot. San Francisco is allowing the 3rd most fantasy points per game to wide receivers out of the slot. And then I want to make the case for Robbie Anderson. I mean, this is not a 15% guy, 20% by any means. This is like a low-owned shot-in-the-dark punt play. And it goes back to – this is a brand play. I'm just going to be honest. It's a brand play. This goes back to Backup Connection, which is one of the first articles I ever wrote for numberfire.com. J.J. Zacharyson actually didn't publish it, but it was a great article, a bunch of stats to back it up. And it just says, like, a backup quarterback who has a backup wide receiver. They spend a lot of time on the practice field together. They get to know each other's idiosyncrasies. They builds a rapport, whatever. And then if the wide receiver gets promoted and then the quarterback gets promoted, they kind of have this rapport and they're going to target each other a lot. And we saw this earlier this year on the Bears with Cam Meredith and Brian Hoyer. And I think this is the case with Bryce Petty and Robbie Anderson. So Robbie Anderson has been Bryce Petty's favorite target this season. He's made up he has a 31.5% target market share when Bryce Petty's on the field. Even in the preseason, he was his top target. He had 9 targets which was the most on the team when Bryce Petty was on the field. In the preseason, he accounted for 31.6% of Bryce Petty's total yards and 2 of his 3 touchdowns. He had 152 yards. The next closest receiver had only 54. I mean, it's a brand play, so I'm gonna have shares. But what do you think, Johnny?
He is he's not like, I don't think you can play him in cash. That discussion has been.
Oh, he's definitely
Twitter,
actually. I don't know. I was gonna say he's definitely not in cash. He might be in cash.
So
depends on what kind of lineups you can make.
The thing with Robbie Anderson is like
he's minimum price, guys.
He wasn't exactly the most targeted in Bryce Petty's last start. He saw the same targets as Enunwa and Marshall, but he did see 6. He saw 12 targets last week, but a lot of them were just Petty, like just throwing it up, going nowhere.
Yes, so he racked up like a ton of air yards. Good for him.
But this is a spot where that's where the Niners struggle. They're like okay in the slot or like decent in the slot.
No, they're really bad in the slot. I just said that.
They're bad but
they're one of the worst.
They've been better in the slot compared to the outside, right?
No, they're one of the worst in the slot. They're bottom 5.
Well, that's definitely changed them.
They're bottom 3. Yeah, they're bottom 3 in the slot.
So then, I mean, dude, I don't know, man. Yes. Can you play Robbie Anderson in tournaments? Yes. Could Robbie Anderson see 0 targets? Yes. So,
he's not going to see 0 targets. I promise you that.
No, he's not going to see 0 targets. But it's possible. It's totally possible that Devin Smith or whatever his fucking name is comes in and plays over him or something. But no.
So you're right. In his last start, he was tied with all wide receivers in targets. He didn't blow them away. He blew them away last week, and he blew them away in the preseason. But in Bryce Petty's first start, he had 6 targets, same as whatever, Marshall, Enunwa, whoever. Who led the team in targets that week? Bilal Powell. Is this by any means a Bilal Powell week? No, it's a Matt Forte week, which is probably the Jets player we should be spending all this time on.
Yeah, I think Forte is a good play. I mean, you play running backs against the 49ers, right? Like just play them.
Is there any argument beyond that?
No. I don't know. I'm not going to get crazy with Robbie Anderson. I'm going to play Cap in tournaments though. I'm going to play him a lot. Like a lot. Can't run on the Jets, man. Like with running backs, but I think Cap should be able to run on the Jets. And the Jets are bad. Like they're a bad football team. They looked like they gave up last week. So I'm going to play Cap, dude. He's trying to get his job back and stuff. So, all right, I lost Scott. But, yeah, I'm playing Kaepernick. Vance McDonald, I'm not stacking him with anybody else. Not super stoked about Carlos Hyde. I've seen some talk about Carlos Hyde, but I think you can play him. Not super excited about Hyde. Not really excited about Jets. Forte, definitely somebody you can play. But, yeah, Jets are somebody you want to be careful with. Like, you don't want to have tons of exposure to any Jets because they've been, like, quitting playing football. Does that sound about right, Scott?
Yeah, it's gross.
Yeah. Okay. Next game.
The only good thing is that they're up against the defense to target. Yeah, let's move on to the next game. No 3-hour power podcast this week.
Yeah. Seahawks, Packers. I think
this is supposed to snow.
If the weather is supposed to be like it's projected, then you like can't really use anybody in this game. Like I'm seeing like 6 or 7 inches of
Rawls,
snow.
bro.
6 or 7 inches of snow. Maybe
Thomas Rawls.
Maybe Rawls.
Definitely Rawls.
If we're getting like 6 or 7 inches of snow, you just like normally snow is not a concern, but the type of snow they're projecting is definitely a concern. But if it doesn't snow, like if they change the weather projection, there's not going to be any snow. I think this game shoots out, and I like Russ and Rodgers and all the pass catchers. Any other thoughts on that? It's kind of all I got.
I really like Thomas Rawls. I think Green Bay is not the defense that we thought they were. They've allowed 555 yards and 7 touchdowns on the ground over their past 5 games, excluding Week 12 against the Eagles. And I think that's okay to do because they were without Ryan Matthews. So I think that makes it okay. They allowed 4.9 yards per attempt over that time span. And it was with Devonta Freeman dealing with a hip pointer, Lamar Miller dealing with a rib injury. And, he exploded against Carolina last week. He rushed for 106 yards and 2 touchdowns and 15 carries. The only other 100-yard rusher was Jaquiz Rodgers with 101 yards on 30 carries. He also missed a few series with a concussion, posted stats about why his rookie season was amazing, yet no one seems to realize it. I love him. It's another brand play. He's tall, and if he snows, in games where there's snow, running back score, I don't know, like 2 fantasy points per game over expectation.
Yeah, I mean, if it's like some like okay snow, yeah, in on Rawls. If there's no snow, in on the pass game on both sides. If there is snow, just Rawls. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I like Jimmy Graham.
Even if there's 6 inches of snow? If there's like little snow,
Yeah.
I like Graham.
I like Jimmy Graham.
All right.
Green Bay, let's see my argument. I forget what it was. Green Bay is actually allowing the fewest targets to wide receivers this year. That really surprises me, especially because of how bad they've been to wide receivers.
Do you want to know why? When you're allowing 40-yard touchdowns? When you're allowing 40-yard touchdown passes,
yeah.
targets are down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they're allowing the 3rd most targets to tight ends. They're allowing 7th most fantasy points per game to tight ends. Jimmy Graham's been amazing. Blah, 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 blah.
All right. Next game, Falcons-Rams?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So Falcons-Rams game, this is a really interesting one for us to talk about. So Julio is questionable. Mohamed Sanu is ruled out. Taylor Gabriel should start on the outside. Justin Hardy should probably start in the slot. If Julio is ruled out, Aldrick Robinson will start opposite Taylor Gabriel. What are you thinking about Taylor Gabriel? So I know I am in love with Gabriel if Julio plays and is a decoy. If Julio is out and Aldrick Robinson starts for him instead, do you think Trumaine Johnson still shadows Robinson, and are you still in on Gabriel? Or do we have to reconsider?
Trumaine Johnson absolutely does not shadow if Julio's out.
Right.
He's going to stick to his side. He's only shadowed once this season. It was against Mike Evans, which if you're a smart defensive coordinator, that's what you're going to do.
So what do you do with Taylor Gabriel if Julio Jones is out?
I honestly don't know. I don't have an answer to that. But I if Julio Jones plays, Taylor Gabriel's a must start, 100%.
Right. And then if Julio Jones sits, Jermaine Johnson should see the majority of his snaps on Taylor Gabriel's side of the field.
Yeah, I think you just don't play any of those guys. I think it's too risky.
The question is, do you play Aldrick Robinson in tournaments if Julio sits, because he will be running against EJ Gaines on the other side of the field?
You're right.
Yeah, it's a tough one, man. It's a tough one. Like I hope Julio plays and we can just use Taylor Gabriel. But here we are. Literally
like 100% ownership in Taylor Gabriel. Yeah, fine by me. Maybe, I mean, we never go 100%, but like it's just amazing. Gaines is PFF's worst graded cornerback since week 5. He ranks bottom 10 in fantasy points allowed per snap and coverage and fantasy points allowed per target. Gabriel ranks first in fantasy points per target, per snap. And then over his last 4 games, he has 19 targets. Sanu those targets. Julio Jones is decoy mode. Turf toe shadowed by Tremaine. It's just everything for an awesome Taylor Gabriel week. So I really hope Julio Jones plays.
Yeah, a lot of reevaluation to do if Julio's out. You interested in Austin Hooper? I'm not really interested.
No.
So I like Kenny Britt again. Obviously, the Falcons are bad against receivers. They are missing Desmond Trufant. I'm just going to keep playing Kenny Britt. Everyone can go fuck themselves. Do you like Do you like Todd Gurley with Benny Cunningham probably out?
Yeah. Blah 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 blah. Bell cow game. Blah 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 blah. He's insanely cheap. So week 5 was the last time that Benny Cunningham was out. He saw a season high in snaps, a season high in total yardage, a season high in fantasy points, also the second most carries and the second most targets he's seen in any game this season. Atlanta's surrendering the second most fantasy points per game to running backs. He's the 21st highest priced running back on DraftKings this week. Listen, he's not going to be efficient by any means. He's probably going to still be shitty, but he's getting volume, and that's exactly what you want from the running back position. And I think that makes him the DFS. I don't care that he sucks. I don't care.
Yep, I'm with you. Lance Kendricks, I think, is an interesting punt play, too, in a spot where they're going to have to throw.
I would fight you on it.
Huh?
I'm not going to fight you on it like I do with all your bad tight end plays, but I do like Kenny Britt.
Yeah, I think there's some targets to go around against the Falcons, but it's definitely projection goes down if Julio sits. You want to go to the next game? Oh no. Falcons running backs. Do we play the Falcons running backs? I don't know what to do with them, man.
Dude, that committee just kind of scares me. But I mean, Devonta Freeman's just racking up the touchdowns like no other.
Yeah, if Julio is out, it's like a boost for both of the running backs. But
I heard a lot of sharp people on Shower Boy. What's his name? Coleman. There you go, Tevin Coleman.
Yeah, I mean, he probably sees some slot work or something, but I don't know. I'm
not on it.
Can't get stoked about the running backs, but you can sort of toss them in there. Not super excited. Next game.
Yeah.
Saints Bucks. Jameis is like, he started the week as sort of the chalk, I guess, and it's kind of disappeared. You think Breeze bounces back?
Do you have the highest implied point total of the?
Yep.
Yeah, so I think last week I was like, is Jameis going to be the chalk? And looks like he is. I'm not really on it too much, and we haven't been on. I don't think we've recommended Jameis Winston once this season. I am on Drew Brees.
Let's clarify. Yeah. You recommended Jameis Winston, and I said we should play Derek Carr. But
when was this?
That's in the past.
I deserve all of the grief, all of the shit for that. 100%. I recommended Jameis once and then never again, and will forever yield to Johnny on all Jameis takes. But yeah, so that goes back to why I'm kind of on Breeze. Like, he was 3% owned on a 2 QB site, which is ridiculous. That's what happens is like you'll get these stud players with a low ownership because he was highly owned last week. People got burned, and they're going to fade him just on that. And they're not going to look at raw projections and upside. They're just going to he let me down last week. I'm not playing him this week because I'm mad. Like, that doesn't make sense. That's stupid. Yes, he's been far better at home, but I mean, there was a reason we played him last week. He had over 300 yards, or he averaged over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns over his last 4 games prior to last week. And Tampa Bay sucks this year, and they've sucked at home. They gave up the highest scoring fantasy QB week of the season to Derek Carr at home. They gave up the 25th highest scoring fantasy QB week of the season to the Falcons at home. It's a close game with the highest over-under of the week. I'm on it just because I don't think anyone else is going to be on it.
You're on Breeze? Yeah. And just remember, like, they're playing in Tampa Bay, so like it'll be warm. It won't be one of these like shitty weather games like a bunch of these other games. Yeah. But the Bucks have been good. The last couple of games, their pass rush has really turned up. I think Breeze bounces back for sure. The downside is that Michael Thomas might not play. Michael Thomas is out. It hurts the offense for sure. You're looking at maybe a not full strength. I'm not like I'm playing Cap over Breeze in tournaments, but I like Breeze a lot. You got to think about Snead, Cooks, Fleener, and then like if you really want to go deep, Brandon Coleman has been used in the red zone. Should take over some of that red zone work without Thomas. I think Fleener is the guy who probably gets the biggest boost if Thomas sits. Like, this is the weirdest high total game for me ever in the world. I like Cameron Brate a ton. I think he's one of the best tight end plays, if not the best tight end play. With the Bucks missing all their receivers, they're all dead. You can't play any of the running backs in the Bucks. It's hard to play the running backs on the Saints. I mean, who are you like stoked about? I'm stoked about Evans and Brate. I'm not really stoked about anybody else.
So Snead is in a great spot this week, but he was in a great spot last week, and he let us down. Josh Hill is out this game, so I think that puts Kobe Fleener in among like my top 3 favorite tight ends of the week. I think he's super in play in cash. I love him, and I don't care what you say. Mike Evans, yeah, he's an awesome play. Brandon Cooks and Michael Thomas wouldn't be in very good spots, but I don't think that matters. Yeah, anything else?
No, that's about it. I'm gonna be high on Evans and Brate in tournaments.
I'm higher on Fleener than Brate. I like Evans a lot.
Sounds about right. I don't know. Hard to trust any of the running backs in this game.
I still feel like Ingram and Hightower are like 5% guys each, or maybe more so on Ingram.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely.
He's been amazing. But his usage is like super inconsistent.
Yeah. I mean, you can use either of them, but that's like I wouldn't load up on either of them.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but if Michael Thomas is out, I think Snead's a really good play for his price. Especially because he was so good before Michael Thomas emerged. I think he could go back to some of that usage that he had the first 2 weeks. Next game.
Yeah.
Cowboys Giants. So in this game, I only want Eli and Beckham.
Shep is in a great spot.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote maybe Shepard, and then I wrote a sad face. Why Shepard?
I mean, Orlando Scandrick has been terrible this season. After sitting out all of last year, Dallas is allowing the second most fantasy points per game to wide receivers out of the slot. The good news for Odell Beckham Jr. is the Giants have finally been doing a good job of moving him around the formation. He's playing about 25% of his running 25% of his routes from the slot after kind of only being involved like 5% there for the first 6 or so games of the season. And the Giants are going to move him around. They're going to set him up against Anthony Brown, who's been terrible this season as well. I think OBJ is a great play. He's been fantastic recently, finally getting high target numbers. So I like him a lot. I like Eli too. I wrote him up this week, and he was someone you completely sold me on. And was not on initially. So why don't you make that case right now?
So like Dallas plays really slow. They haven't been able to limit opposing passing attempts because their passing defense is so bad. Over their past 4 games, they've allowed 45, 53, 35, and 46 passing attempts. They've just kind of gotten smashed through the air. Spot where we expect the Giants to be trailing, they're at home. And so, I think Eli sees 35 to 55 passing attempts. So I want to play Eli and I want to play Beckham. Beckham's just been great lately, and people just don't want to play him. And on DK, he's the 4th priced of the stud receivers. I think he has just as high of a ceiling and probably a better floor than the other couple guys. So being on Beckham a ton. I love Beckham, and I'm gonna have a lot of Eli in tournaments too. And someone said Dallas hasn't played as slow lately. Dallas is still the slowest offensive team in the NFL over the entire season. They take the longest per snap in the NFL. So, but they're just bad on passing D, completely bad. I think Witten is the guy I want to bring it back with if I'm playing a Cowboy. What do you think about Witten?
Yeah, I agree. If you're going to play a Cowboy, play him. I think Zeke is probably at contrarian ownership levels, whatever. But, I preferred a few running backs who outperformed Le'Veon Bell last week for the same reason. I just think the Giants' run defense is stout enough to kind of give him some trouble. I like Jason Witten a lot. Cole Beasley, I guess, did well last week. Des Bryant is super intriguing, and this goes back to how you feel about wide receiver versus cornerback matchups. Some people compare it to batter versus pitcher matchups for MLB DFS, which a lot of people don't think makes any sense or is something we can kind of rely on a week-to-week basis. But I found this stat, and this stat is freaking crazy. So I was just the other day just pulling up fantasy points per target numbers among all active wide receivers and all active cornerbacks. And in the top maybe 50 highest minimum 5 or 6 targets, Des Bryant showed up for 3 or 4 cornerbacks, and 2 of those cornerbacks were 2 guys on the Giants. He's crushed Janoris Jenkins and Rogers Cromartie throughout his career. 24 career targets against Jenkins and Rogers Cromartie. He has 22 receptions, 406 yards, and 5 touchdowns. That is nuts. That is terrible numbers. And then Eli Apple, sucks. He ranks 20th worst in yards allowed per target. He's barely graded positively for the season. Still, Jenkins and Cromartie are among PFF's 12 highest graded cornerbacks. They both rank top 20 in fantasy points allowed per target. So I don't know what to do with Dez. I think that keeps him in play in tournaments, but he's not someone I'm super excited about. The matchup is tough, but his success against them historically is something worth considering. One game. Jason Pierre-Paul is out, and Jonathan Hankins is questionable. With regard to the offense, Justin Pugh is questionable, but he was saying to reporters that he feels like he's 100% and good to go. It's just on the coaches. And before he went down with an injury in Week 9, he was PFF's 3rd highest graded offensive lineman overall and 1st highest graded guard. I think that makes a big difference for this offense. Blah, 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 blah. I think that's it. Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah. It's kind of about it. I think Beasley has a bad matchup against Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie.
Again, this is what I was saying before, though, where the Giants linebackers are ass, and then outside of Collins, their safeties, haven't really been performing well. The Giants are still allowing the 8th most fantasy points per game to slot wide receivers or to wide receivers out of the slot. But again, DRC. So I don't know.
I don't know. I don't think he's going to give any trouble to DRC, man.
Yeah, he's not going to give trouble to DRC, but he's going to take advantage of their linebackers like he did in week 1.
I guess.
And I see you trashing my stats. Des Bryant runs like 20% of his routes from the slot.
I didn't trash your stats. It was everybody in
so
chat.
So he'd see a little bit of he'll see a little bit of DRC. 20%. And 50% Jenkins.
You want to talk about the last game? Ravens Patriots. So people are
right. You're Ravens boy. So
people are gonna like play Joe Flacco after the big game, but we know this only happens. We know this only happens once a year. Although it happened twice it happened twice last year, but every other year it happens once a year, and it's not gonna happen again. Dennis Pitta was like not seeing red zone targets, and then they were like, okay, we're going to use Dennis Pitta in the red zone just to like troll everyone and make them hate themselves. So they did it. And they're now like spreading the ball all over the offense. You have no idea who's going to see any targets. They're splitting the carries between both their running backs. They're using Kyle Juszczyk as a pass catching running back, sort of fullback hybrid. There's no one you want to play in this offense. I think you could talk yourself into Steve Smith against the Patriots because the Patriots are bad against the pass. But as for picking someone who you think is going to go off in this spot, no idea. You have anybody on the Ravens you are interested in? I'm kind of like, meh.
Literally no one on the Ravens.
All right. I think Smith you can talk yourself into, but I'm not like stoked about it. Patriots defense is still like bad against the pass. So somebody will have success. I just don't know who it's going to be. And then for the Patriots, this is like not a great spot for the Patriots, and just the fact that the Ravens defense has been like really dominant this year. But I think Edelman's in a good spot in the slot. He'll avoid Jimmy Smith. This is a spot where Malcolm Mitchell probably sees a ton of Jimmy Smith, so he might have a down game. Ravens stop the tight end. It's not a great spot for Martellus Bennett. This probably sort of lines up for a game that should be an Edelman and Dion Lewis game. What do you think?
I want to play Dion Lewis, but I'm still not going to because he's getting out snapped by James White, and they're about an even split in targets. If James White broke his ankle today, Dion Lewis would be in 100% of my lineups. That's not the case. It's still a committee within a committee. So I'm not on him. Julian Edelman, I think, is a great play. He has 38 targets over his last 3 weeks. No surprise, Rob Gronkowski only played 7 snaps over that stretch. And I think that's what we're going to see with Rob Gronkowski out this week is more Edelman targets. And runs 52% of his routes to the slot. Should see Gerard Powers, who grades out negatively for the season, is being targeted on 18.9% of his routes in coverage, which ranks 15th highest among 101 corners. So he's getting targeted a high amount, most on the Ravens. Edelman hasn't really flexed much of a ceiling this year, but he does lead the team in targets inside the 20, 10, and end zone targets, so he could be due for positive regression there. Really, Ravens are amazing against the run. They've only allowed 3 rushing touchdowns to running backs all year, second best yards per carry. So if they're going to reach that, second or third highest implied total of the week, it'll likely come through the air, which means it'll likely come via Julian Edelman.
Yeah, I'd bet the under on this game if I had to pick. Brady's got the injury. You got the Ravens offense that stinks. Ravens defense that's really good. But yeah, I mean, if I had to pick a guy on the Patriots who I think is in a good spot, it's probably Edelman. Anything else you can really think of on this game? I'm not really excited about this game. It seems gross. I mean, Patriots Ravens games can be really gross.
I mean, we should be on Flacco. We've been on quarterbacks every single week against the Patriots.
I mean, we should be. And I mean, so the thing with Flacco, the reason that Flacco is like, this is why if you want to talk yourself into Flacco, he's a thing. The Ravens O-line has turned the corner, I guess, over the last 3 or 4 weeks. They're allowing, I mean, they allowed a ton of sacks to start the season, and they've turned that around. Football Outsiders has them as like, I think, a top 5 or 6 pass protection unit recently. Flacco has been sacked only 5 times over his last 4 games. He was sacked way more over that, over his first half of the season. So that's sort of your thing, and the Patriots can't rush the passer, but like I can't really get behind him. Their offense just is kind of in shambles. You know, if he blows up again, fuck me. You got anything
Yeah, no,
else
they're no doubt terrible. Yeah.
So, we got some weird guy saying things in the chat about Raiders defense or something. I don't know. Anyways, you want to talk kickers?
Yeah.
Real quick. This is kind of a weird week for kickers. I kind of like the Tampa Bay kicker a lot in this spot, and the Saints kicker, because that's a game that I'm like struggling to figure out offensively. So Will Lutz and Aguayo. Aguayo's been like better, but he's still like really bad. So he's a risk. I think he's an interesting tournament play, because if he actually like shows up and doesn't like shit the bed, he could have some success. But he is definitely a chance to completely shit the bed, because he's done that before. And then I like Lutz a lot though. Is there anybody? I mean, who are you on kicker wise? Anyone you on the top of your head?
I'm on Detroit kicker, Indy kicker, Atlanta kicker.
I'm glad you know their names. So, yeah. I think another guy that's interesting is Chandler Catanzaro. I think the Cardinals are in a good spot. But Will Lutz is probably the guy I'm really interested in. I think I agree with Scott and everybody he mentioned. As for defenses, real quick, Bengals, I think, are one of my top plays. I like the Chargers as well. It's kind of like the two that I'm looking at the most. I think you can consider the Cardinals and the Vikings. Vikings are kind of a ceiling play. You got any other defensive takes, man?
I think you could take both sides of the San Francisco Jets game.
Yeah, San Francisco is definitely a defensive play that nobody's going to use, and they could definitely win that game.
Maybe a ton of snaps, ton of opportunities to hopefully force fumbles, pick the ball off.
Anybody else?
No, that's it for me.
All right, man. Well, thanks for tuning in. See you guys.